shortly. We're just waiting on 2 people.
Let you know, in about 20 minutes, my brother's going to be here and take over.
Oh, okay.
I've only been feeling crook over.
Oh, okay.
Not cold,
Yeah.
nothing contagious,
Yeah.
just in the gut.
Yeah.
But I thought I'd be fine, but I'm just like... Do too well. Sorry about that.
You can shed tears that she's gone, or you can smile because she's lived. You can close your eyes and pray that she'll come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that she's left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see her, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember her and only that she's gone, or you can cherish her memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or do what she'd want, to smile, open your eyes, love, and to go on. Friends, my name is Aaron Hilly. I'm a celebrant and chaplain with Tuckers, and we have all gathered here to celebrate the life of Margaret Jean Inglis, and always referred to as Jean, and I'll be doing that today. We've gathered here because of the significance of her life and each one of yours in her 89 years worth of living, and she's had an influence on each one of your lives, and I know that she leaves wonderful memories for each one of you. I do know that each one of you also hold your own memories and about the individual relationships that you've had, and I'm sure most of you remember that old Seekers song, I'll Never Find Another You. And that is so true under these circumstances. When we think back on someone's life, no one could ever replace another person that we love and that we care about. I do know that Jean was quiet and modest. She was never the loud one, perhaps a little bit opposite to Ian in that sense. He was the talker and Jean was the keen observer in everything that was going on, never the centre of attention. She had a steely determination in everything that she did, and this is not my words that I did pick up from the family, the children the other day. The word that was mentioned was pig-headed as well. Loyal though, supportive, hospitable, loving and caring. Loved the words nurturing as well. Had a great memory. I understand she was just driving a car up until a couple of months ago as well, and certainly someone that's going to be missed by all that love her. You know, I truly believe that funerals are for the living, for each one that has come in here today, and also those that are joining via a webcast. I am aware that there's many people that would love to be here but are unable to be here due to COVID restrictions. I do welcome those that are joining us via a webcast today. There's extended family and close friends. Thank you for joining us today as well, and we trust that you'll feel intimately a part of everything that's going on. You know, when a loved one dies, it triggers off a whole burst of emotion for us, floods us with all sorts of feelings, sadness and grief. And sometimes there's even loneliness in the middle of all of that, knowing the relationship that we've had no longer exists in the same way. And you know, there's no religion or philosophy that can take away that grief from our hearts. That's one of the things that we have to deal with in our lives. And You know, the reality is that we will grieve forever. We don't get over the loss of someone that we loved, but we learn to live with it. And while it might feel at the moment like, you know, there's a whole bunch of emotions that are there and in front of your face, it will just take some time. But no, the grief will always be there, and it will change over time. And one of the things that I always suggest in these moments is when we remember someone's life, if we're thankful and we're grateful, it helps to shift that really heavy, deep sorrow into a smile. And I know that's how she'd like to be remembered today. So if we have that in the back of our mind, then I know that will be helpful as well. When we're thankful, it just has that ability to shift that really heaviness in there. Writer A.A. Milne, or through the character Winnie the Pooh, and he's a little philosopher in his own sense, and I love this. He said, "How lucky am I to have had something that makes saying goodbye so hard?" That's so true when we're saying farewell to someone that we love and that we care about like this. And there's always things in our lives that we don't want to happen, and they do, things that we have no control of, and particularly when we're thinking about death, we have no control over those circumstances most of the time. Ageing, accidents, disease. But I do know, and you know, that that's part of the life cycle as well. One of the most significant things that we can learn today is, can be wise from this very moment on, is learning about her life. You're here because of the significance of her life and yours. You're here out of friendship and out of relationship and love, and those are the very things that she held very dearly to as well. And it is about the recognition of her life and being able to be reminded that she had an influence on this world, and just as her life has had an influence on yours in this world, you also have an impact and influence on the world as well. So I trust by the end of the service, instead of feeling as though something has been horribly ripped away from you, but it will be the reminder of everything that she's given to each one of you, that nothing can ever be taken away from that as well. I think one of the most important things on a day like today is how you're remembered. And we can tell stories for hours, probably days, weeks and months even, but it really is about someone's character. We analyse that to some degree. We're remembered with love. Are we kind and generous person? Are we peaceful, unconditional with your love, approachable, friendly, patient, those sorts of things, and a bit of a sense of humour. And, is it someone that we're going to miss? And clearly today we can say yes to all of those things, that she had what we consider to be the fruit of a good life. These are the things that we're judged by. It's not about the amount of money that we have in our bank, the degree that we might have. It is about our character. And I know that her character stands tall today. I do know that it's at times like this, it's always a little difficult to try and find the right words to say. Being here, though, is a wonderful way of showing your love, your appreciation and respect, not only for Jean, but for each other, and of course also in the same sense for those that are watching on today. And on behalf of everyone, I'd like to express our sympathy to her family. Of course, we're reminded of Ian, who passed away 5 years ago, or almost 5 years ago. I think it was just a matter of a month or so, is that correct? And I got to meet Jean back then, and we had a beautiful time, and she was really well organised with what was required for Ian's funeral as well. Of course, to her family, to Rick and Julie, to Tony and Jacqueline, Katrina and Nick, to the grandchildren, Henry, Philippa, Evan, Alex and Ben. We also remember Robert, who's passed away, and sister-in-law Judy Patterson, and also Ian's brother Jeff, and all the extended family members and close friends. Our kind and loving thoughts with each one of you today. Well, I think we all like to hear about the journey of someone's life, and I'm always in a privileged position to hear lots and lots of stories of people's lives. I say to myself at the end of the day, what have I learnt from this person's life? And I trust that I'm going to learn some beautiful things today. And I know there'll be moments that are shared today. Each one of you will know some of the specifics, but there'll be other bits and pieces that are shared that you perhaps didn't know about. And I'm hoping that's what will happen by the end of the day. There'll be little things that you didn't know about that will be able to be joined into the beautiful memories that each one of you have. But we're thinking about her life, about her personality and her character, the good times, the difficult times even, things that make us stronger, the things that make us softer, a bit more tender-hearted, things that fuel us with passion, funny moments and those things that no one will ever forget. And, we're trying to précis down 89 years of living into a few moments today, and it really seems impossible to do that, doesn't it? But we're going to do our best. So to begin with, I'd like to invite Rick to come forward, going to share a little bit, then I'm going to invite Tony to come forward following after that. Thanks very much.
Welcome everybody. Normally we welcome the assembled, but most of you will be clocking in through the wonders of the World Wide Web, so we apologise that our numbers are restricted to 10, but unfortunately that was not our call. That's by order of the government, so please don't be shy. If you're watching it at home or on your laptop, let us know that you've clocked in and have been watching. We'd really appreciate your feedback and your acknowledgement. That'd be great. Look, it's tough at the moment. My apologies. We're still in shock. It's only a month ago that Mum was holidaying in Noosa Heads at Katrina and Nick's place up there, and so it's a bitter pill to swallow that she's no longer with us. But here we are, and ironically today she was supposed to be having her second COVID injection, would you believe? But we're here instead, so that's most unfortunate. We thought she'd live to be 100. Every birthday I'd rag her about, oh, you're 1 year closer to getting a telegram from King Charles, which wasn't a real winner with her, unfortunately. So she's fallen short, unfortunately. But you know, people will read in the paper she was 89. She's had a good innings, but you know, we know that she was. She really put people 20 years her junior to shame. She was active right till the end, as I said, on holidays last month, and you know, it was only on the 7th of July that things started to turn south, and did so fairly rapidly. Anyway, enough of my ramblings, onto the bio. Margaret Jean Inglis was born on the 10th of May 1932 in Mooroopna near Shepparton, the first child of James, known as Jock, and Marion, known as May, who had married 3 years earlier. As May's sister was also known as Margaret, their baby daughter became known as Jean and remained that way forevermore. At the time of Jean's birth, the family lived in Mooroopna, where Jock operated the local pharmacy. But 2 years later, in 1934, Jock and May moved to Warrnambool, as Jock had purchased the pharmacy there in Timor Street. Subsequently, the family also purchased a large old house in Merri Crescent, Warrnambool, where Jean's formative years were spent. Her younger brother Robert arrived in 1936, and the Patterson family was then complete. Jean attended school at Warrnambool Primary, and her early secondary years were spent at Warrnambool High School before becoming a boarder at Barongo Girls College in Geelong. She finished her HSC year in 1950 and enrolled in the Victorian College of Pharmacy to follow in her father's footsteps. Whilst at Pharmacy College, she met and started going out with Ian Inglis, managing to overcome the tyranny of distance, with Ian living in North Bourne in Melbourne and Jean, of course, in Warrnambool, where for a short time she worked as a pharmacy apprentice at her father's shop. On 2nd of February 1957, Jean and Ian married in Warrnambool, with Ian, in what would be an ongoing characteristic, it must be said, late for his own wedding. Within 2 weeks, they were off to the United Kingdom on boat via the Cape of Good Hope because the Suez Canal had just been closed. They were embarking on a working honeymoon, basing themselves in and working in a community pharmacy in London, whilst travelling from time to time in Europe and even across the USA at one stage. Jean and Ian arrived back in Australia in late 1958 after nearly 2 years away. They were keen to secure employment within the same retail organisation, and this opportunity arose in 1959 with the party's pharmacy group in Geelong and Queenscliff, conveniently located between Jean's parents' place in Warrnambool and Ian's in Melbourne. In 1960, Jean and Ian purchased their first house at 124 Roslyn Road, Belmont, after having welcomed their first child, Richard. Earlier that year, 2 more children followed, Tony in 1962 and Katrina in 1965. In 1963, Ian and Jean were invited to and subsequently joined the party's pharmacy partnership. Jean, however, generally only worked as a relieving pharmacist for a couple of days a week after she became a mother. In fact, her only subsequent full-time work for a sustained period was in 1977 when all three of her kids were in secondary school simultaneously, full-time work being a necessity caused by the strain on the family finances. In 1981, with their kids almost out of secondary school, Katrina was in year 11 at the time, Jean and Ian purchased a rundown old house at 13 Park Street, Geelong for $21,000, scarcely believable today, demolished it and built in 1982 what was then modern two-storey townhouse with a view to their retirement years. This was a remarkable piece of foresight, well before inner city living was trendy, when instead all everyone wanted was their own quarter-acre block. This place was to serve as Jean's home for the last 39 years of her life. Ian had joined Geelong City Council in 1976 and in 1983 was elected mayor. Truth to tell, Jean probably felt somewhat indifferent about this, having to increase her workload at the pharmacy to cover Ian's mayoral absences, as well as participate in meet and greets at mayoral receptions. She never was a natural extrovert, but accepted her role with good grace and was a great support to Ian for the 2 years of his mayoralty. She even turned the role to her advantage by persuading Ian to use the disability agency Coringle's fundraising group, of which she was a member, to assist with catering for many mayoral events. Ian and Jean remained in the pharmacy partnership until the end of 1986, opting to then become part-time salaried employees, although Jean's time in a dispensary was even more infrequent and she discontinued her pharmacy registration in the early 90s, which allowed her to more vigorously pursue other passions. More on these later. Semi-retirement enabled Jean and Ian to travel more frequently. We offspring remember some great family holidays in the 1970s to New Zealand, the Flinders Ranges in South Australia, Lake Hindmarsh in the Wimmera Mallee, and Noosa and Fraser Island in Queensland. But with no kids in tow, Jean and Ian from the late 1980s were able to venture further afield for their first significant overseas trips since their honeymoon. There were extensive trips to the USA to stay with Ian's brother Jeff, who lived in Los Angeles at the time, and to the UK and Europe. Ian's travel preferences were much more vanilla than Jean's, so Jean ventured even further afield. She had developed a fascination with all things Egyptian, and so travelled with friends to see the pyramids in the early 1990s, which she recalled as the hottest place she had ever experienced, with regular mid-40s temperatures not uncommon. Then in the late 2000s, Jean travelled to China with her cousin-in-law Bev Thomas through a group that Bev was involved in, being particularly keen to marvel at the terracotta warriors, inspired no doubt by her pottery background. Jean and Ian's last overseas trip together was in 2010, when they joined a boat cruise down the Rhine River, commencing from Amsterdam. By now, Ian's Parkinson's disease diagnosis of a few years earlier was starting to become more of a factor, and so when in port, he tended to stay on the boat and Jean would participate in the onshore tours. In September 2012, Ian was admitted to aged care and Jean loyally would attend practically every day to sit with him and help him with his lunch. However, her travelling days were not yet done, and in 2015, again with Bev Thomas, she visited Russia, touring from St. Petersburg to Moscow. In August 2016, after 59 and a half years of marriage, Ian succumbed after a long battle with Parkinson's. Jean's support of him over the preceding 10 or so years, particularly during his nearly 4 years in care, had been exemplary. But it did give her a resolve that this was not how she wanted to go when her time came, and as recent events have demonstrated, she has indeed eventually gone out on her own terms. In 2018, at 86 years young, Jean finally ticked off a long-desired bucket list item when she participated in a weaving-themed tour of Japan. In their travelling days, Ian had never shown much desire to visit Asia, but with a bit of encouragement from family and friends that she was still young enough to journey there and appreciate it, Jean took the plunge. She loved it, but did confess upon arriving back at Tullamarine that she felt her international touring days were now probably over. Jean was a quiet but determined, at times stubborn, person with a, quote, solid Presbyterian work ethic, unquote, and who, when she was in, she was all in. Family was very important to her, and she loved her 3 children and her 5 grandchildren, even telling Tony and Katrina when their kids were very young that she was coming up to Melbourne to babysit for them and so they could go out and enjoy themselves. In other words, not really giving them any choice in the matter whatsoever. No one is perfect, and Jean had some vices, although relatively unimportant ones. Notably, she displayed some of the worst handwriting in the history of humankind. No one will disagree, I'm sure, because she was in too much of a rush in everything she did to worry about legibility. Jean didn't ever go without, but was always very careful with money. We put this down to having a Scot as a father, but it was really her mother, who lived to 96, who instilled this in her. A great example was on Jean's 2016 Russia trip, when her flight stopped on the way to Dubai and she went to the top of the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building. She paid the admission in United Arab Emirates currency and was horrified upon returning home to see the Australian dollar conversion of the cost of the ride was $199, exclaiming she certainly wouldn't have done it if she knew it was going to be that much. Another unusual and slightly eccentric habit was for Jean to collect tap water in a couple of jugs by the kitchen sink whilst waiting for the dishwashing water to turn hot. This would then in due course be added to the jug of water, boiled for cups of tea. Truly a case of waste not, want not. Water from dripping taps also had to be collected for her indoor plants and not go to waste. Now, a biography of Jean cannot possibly be complete without a recap of her involvement in the craft space. This started when she took up pottery in the 1960s, and in due course a small studio, lovingly known as Cultural Corner, was built as an extension of the garage at the Belmont House. Jean acquired a kiln and used to produce pottery for exhibition and sale on a hobby basis. Her potting output gradually reduced as she embraced hand spinning and hand weaving more and more, and ceased altogether on her move into Geelong City in 1982. But hand weaving became Jean's passion for the last 50 years of her life. In 1973, Jean commenced 48-year memberships of and involvement with both the Handweavers and Spinners Guild of Victoria, as well as the Geelong Handweavers and Spinners Guild, broken only now by her passing. Even aged in her late 80s, she continued to do duty, as she called it, for the day at the Victorian Guild's Carlton North shopfront 4 times a year. Aaron, you were saying she was driving until a couple of months ago. She's actually driving until probably the beginning of this month. Carmel Parker from the Victorian Guild has contributed the following, including memories of Guild members. Thanks, Carmel. Jean was an incredibly quiet person, but loved to talk about weaving. She contributed to the Guild by both working in the gallery and selling her amazing woven articles in the gallery. When talking about Jean to other members, they remember different encounters with her, such as, quote, "I completed a weaving workshop with her and she was a wonderful teacher." Quote, "During shifts together, she would jump up and serve customers and loved talking about weaving." Quote, "We were competitors when entering our work at shows, but she was a lovely person and a great weaver." Quote, "She liked order in the gallery and would walk around ensuring everything was displayed correctly." Everyone I spoke to talked about her love of weaving and of a quiet and reserved person who had a beautiful personality. Jean will be sadly missed at the Handweavers and Spinners Guild of Victoria and by her many friends that she made over her many years of weaving. Jean was both Secretary and Treasurer of the Geelong Guild at different times in the 1970s and 1980s and was awarded life membership of the Geelong Guild in 1999. Her involvement with the Guild included working as a steward at the Geelong Show each year and organising country conference workshops. Joan Corn from the Geelong Guild has offered the following about Jean. Both a spinner and weaver, Jean shone out as a weaver, not only weaving cloth but making clothing from her carefully designed fabric to suit particular outfits, and many other items such as bags and teddy bears, to name just a couple. Just might add, if anyone wants a teddy bear, there's about a dozen at home at the moment. Submissions of prize-winning entries in the Geelong Show, Melbourne and then Bendigo sheep shows over all the years from 1977 until the current COVID lockdown prevented any further possibilities. Often Jean won, besides prizes for individual items, prizes for best paraded garment or groups of items, which might include a woven and styled jacket, stuffed toy, bag, scarf, shawl, and a hand-spun and knitted item. Not only did Jean participate in various shows, she was accepted in many exhibitions, including the juried Geelong Craft Council in 1988 at the Geelong Gallery, and in 2016 at the Scarf Festival at the National Wool Museum, Geelong. Jean's work has recently been acknowledged by the National Wool Museum in acquiring some of her outfits for their permanent collection, an honour given to few. Thanks, Joan, for those words. Jean was awarded first prize in the 2016 Scarf Festival organised by the National Wool Museum, where she had served as an that's an honorary staff member, on Thursday afternoons for at least 23 years, and in all probability, possibly since the early days of the NWM, which started back in 1988. She won the woven category as well as being the overall winner of the National Wool Museum's 2016 Scarf of the Year project, at the age of 86, I might add, for her creation titled Arachne's Web. To quote Stephanie Rosestone of the NWM, Jean left a significant legacy at the museum. Jean was a key member of the Geelong-based Textile and Fibre Artists Group, which exhibited annually from the 1990s and through the 2000s. In fact, between Elaine Mitchell and Jean, they pretty much ran the whole show, organising their annual exhibitions initially at the National Wool Museum and later in Elaine's large home theatre at Ceres. Elaine recalls as follows: "We had such a wonderful time over a number of decades with the textile and fibre artists. She was the best treasurer and we sold a lot of work for many people, all of whom were paid promptly. Her weaving was always outstanding and her work so beautifully done." In the early 1980s, Jean enrolled in an extensive weaving workshop which led in 1983 to the formation of the EPI group by all the workshop students who all shared a deep interest in textiles and weaving. The group in their early years held a number of exhibitions and have continued with program get-togethers most months since, right up till the current day. One EPI member, Stella Schneider, recalls as follows: "Jean was undisputably our most productive weaver and regular attender of gatherings. Distance and foul weather were no deterrent. When a member, that's Stella, moved down to East Gippsland, her Saturday meeting required an overnight stop and many hours of travel. Jean did not miss one. Some members haven't yet made it. The last meeting Jean attended was just a fortnight before she died. She used public transport on a chaotic day when coaches replaced trains for some sections of the journey. She was away from home for nearly 12 hours. A few days later, she was not complaining, but she said she thought she would use the car next time." Jean was multi-talented. We will remember her as an industrious, dependable, quiet and very private, frugal but never mean. Her kumquat marmalade recipe she kindly shared, and it is treasured. And like the teddy bears, there's plenty of them left too. Jean's death notice in the papers stated, "An active, creative life right to the end." It's impossible to argue with that. She never wasted a single moment of her life and enjoyed a great life for 89 years and 2 months, and a shitty one for just the last 9 days, and that's not a bad ratio. We love you, Mum, and we'll miss you terribly. Cheers.
Well done. Thank you so much for that, Rick. Now, Tony, if you'd like to come forward, please.
We do love you, Mum, and we already miss you terribly. Mum wouldn't wanted a fuss made at her funeral. She wouldn't have expected lots of people on long talks. She wouldn't want to interrupt anyone's plans for the day. But so many people have reached out to telling us how shocked they were at Mum's passing, how much she meant to them, and what they remembered and treasured. It's a pity, as Rick said, that we're restricted to 10 people only, when there were so many people who wanted to be here. Mum would want most to be surrounded by family, by her children and their partners, by her granddaughter and grandsons, and having overcome a few obstacles, here we all are. Acknowledging also that other family members can't be here, Nick, Jeff, Judy, Chris and Philip as well. There's so many friends. I'd just like to share some of the reflections that friends and family have shared with us about Mum, just to try and bring you all into the room with us here today. Conrad, a childhood friend of mine who spent many summers with us, said, "Your mother, who was Jean to me, and the home she created was such a big part of my childhood. When I stayed with your family, she was always around, but no closer than she needed to be. In the background, and somehow all the more significant for being so. An adult in my life who managed to care without fuss." Brother-in-law Jeff says, "Jean was a great mother and wife, loving, industrious and thorough, and a great weaver. I, along with many others, will miss her." Cousin Catherine from England said from Perth said she was a remarkable lady whose stamina and energy were inspiring. Leslie said, "I admired her special creativity. It's lovely to recognise that her creative talents have been passed on to her grandchildren." And Coral, reflecting on Mum and Dad together, said that Mum was a beautiful counterbalance of quiet intelligence that could never be underestimated. She had a capacity for thoughtfulness and creativity, imagination and skills in an era of mass production. Andrea remembered her as a calm, kind, helpful person and a loving grandmother to Henry, Philippa and Evan. Gil said she was never ruffled, never surprised, and always there with a jar of marmalade and a pot of soup in times of need. Nick, Katrina's husband, remembered how instantly he felt totally accepted into the family from the first moment he walked in the door with Katrina as a girlfriend. Later to be wife and partner. And there's a lot of messages from the hand spinners and weavers in the EPI community. I'll share a personal experience with this group. I once went to visit Mum to a weavers meeting in the Heighton Scout Hall. I arrived and opened the door and looked around for the little lady with hair of grey and scanned the whole room, and that described every one of them. So I scanned again and found Mum and called her over. We went outside and we were just talking quietly, and one of Mum's colleagues, I think just a bit older than her, said, "Oh, Jean, I like your new boyfriend. He's a bit tall for you though, isn't he?" Haven't quite been able to look at a homespun wool jumper quite the same. Joan remembers her as having a thirst to extend her weaving knowledge forever. And also said the most recent excursion only a few years ago was to Japan, which included an opportunity for some hands-on experience and techniques new to Jean, but she opted to forego the communal bathing to conserve her energy for whatever the next day may have in store. Rosemary said she always had something to show us that was beautifully woven and made. She was an inspiration. I also loved the way she embraced the online meetings, which was wonderful for a person of 89 years. Gay said she was a talented and prolific weaver and an extremely good friend to us all. Apart from that, she was just a really lovely person, and I'll miss her greatly. I'm so pleased that she was still enjoying herself right up to the end, just the way Jean would have wanted it. She never wasted a single moment of her life. Lorraine said, even at 89, Jean was very much loved with all her interests, still weaving magical cloth, although she assured me not as much now. She was a wonderful friend. I miss her terribly. Rhonda said she was always contributing to whatever event, craft, workshop or raffle we were involved in. Jean never missed entering her fabulous woven articles in the Geelong and Bendigo show and was always a winner. Jean was always interested in and helping others with their craft. She will be sadly missed by all. You are so lucky to have Jean as your mum. Be proud of having such a lovely lady in your life. We are proud, and we were very lucky to have Mum in our lives. So many memories and reflections of Mum from seeing her creative habits, be they drawing, needlecraft, graphic art, photography, bonsaiing, passed on to all her grandchildren. I think they largely skipped Rick and I, but Katrina certainly inherited the handicrafts and probably no small measure of her quiet determination. I remember her dancing in the kitchen in Belmont when she was 40-something years old to AC/DC's TNT. At the time I thought it was out of character, but she was loving it. Remember her prodigious creative talent and output and all the awards. The trailblazing path she took as a female studying pharmacy in the 1950s, when most women studied nursing or teaching or didn't study at all. Remember the stewed steak curries of our childhood that contained desiccated coconut, sultanas and banana, a bit of an acquired taste. Endless supply of those homespun wool hand-knitted jumpers. Being frugal and never wanting to unnecessarily throw anything out, which manifested itself in the last week with us discovering a collection of maybe 60 bread plastic pag ties that were sorted by colour, patiently awaiting someone to discover a use for them, and to clear out the pantry with goods dating back to a use-by date, I think we clocked the best at 1987. Remember in the 1970s, in an era when women, particularly mothers, didn't work professionally as much as today, Mum going back to full-time work to ensure that her youngest daughter, Katrina, could get the education she felt she deserved. Remember the parties hosted at Roslyn Road, including Mum's 40th, that involved an invite in verse that obliged an answer in verse, and the famous or infamous Roman toga party in the evening of the total eclipse of the sun in 1976, where it descended into raucous songs that three of us kids snuck in and recorded, much to Dad's chagrin when we kept playing it to him afterwards. The prodigious baking and ready supply of the chocolate coconut slices and lemon slices, always a fridge full and always left by the box full when she'd visit us in Melbourne. Insisting that we wore disposable paper underwear on our camping trips, and the grim satisfaction she seemed to have in her face as they were thrown into the campfire after use. A dedication in the 70s to watching the TV soap MASH, at which she would laugh and laugh and laugh. Her consistency and loyal to Bruce, helping him with the weekly shopping and dropping off of hand-baked goods. How very much she enjoyed the 2 weeks in Noosa with Katrina and Rick, being enjoyed for a while by Rick and Julie and Mary, just at the end of last month. When I spoke to her while she was there, and even after she returned, she was buzzing with how much she enjoyed it. Remembering her quiet, fierce love for her grandchildren and love of having family together, and her quiet constancy in everything she did, but mostly for her love for us. Mum's expression of love wasn't overly overt, but it was no less felt, no less real, no less wonderful. It was a love that had the same quiet constancy that was characteristic of everything she did and was expressed in so many direct and indirect ways. A love that would stay with you, even if you're away from the house or the city or the state or the country. A love that would glow quietly inside you always. And always be there to offer and provide strength and comfort. Sometimes we'd disappoint Mum, sometimes we'd provide her with delight. We wouldn't align with all her views, but we'd understand where they came from. We loved her and were loved by her nonetheless. While Mum gave us the gift of being a role model for living a just, supportive, hard work and largely uncomplicated life, I think the gift of her absolute and unreserved love for us, quietly expressed but so constant, was the greatest of the many gifts that she could give us. To my siblings, thank you so much. The last 2 weeks, the first in hospital at Mum's bedside on 24/7 shifts between us, and then locked down in Geelong together as we dealt with and supported each other through our grief, was in some ways a very special time, and a time that brought us closer together. And I wouldn't put it past Mum to orchestrate all that, including the lockdown, to have her children brought together to support each other. To Katrina, who took charge in the last week and organised her big brothers in and around the hospital, navigating the path through nurses and doctors and wards and the confronting world of a hospital, and was the one who was there with Mum in the small hours of the Saturday morning to make sure she wasn't alone when she passed away. Thank you. To Rick, who's been Mum's companion and support here in Geelong, and played such a large part in Mum being able to stay so active and healthy to her last few days, and who shouldered the burden of reaching out to friends and family and the funeral arrangements. Thank you so much. That gift that you gave Mum of that support is something so special and impactful, and something we'll always be grateful for. Rick said that Mum lived an active, creative life right to the end, and that she never wasted a moment of her life, and that's so true. Mum's passing was such a shock to so many of us because it seemed like Mum's constancy would be fully applicable to her life, that she would just keep on going forever. That list of chores she made for herself in that very small one-font handwriting was inexhaustible, and it seemed like she would just keep going, ticking them off. But she did tick so many of them off, as Rick's eulogy detailed. She lived a very full life, one in which she didn't waste a single moment right until the very end. Mum was clear about what she wanted her life to be like and what she didn't want it to be like. So while the shock of Mum's death was awful, we drew some comfort, and in the end we're grateful that she was able to have the end of life that she wanted. So, to Margaret Jean Inglis, to Nana, to Mum, thank you for the life you lived, for the life and love you gave us, and for being such an important and constantly supportive drive and presence in our lives. We love you and we miss you terribly.
Thank you so much, Tony. Now I'd like to invite Alex to come forward, please, and go and read that poem for us.
Just a fitting poem that Nana kept close to her. The Weaver by B.M. Franklin. My life is but a weaving between my Lord and me. I cannot choose the colours, he weaves so steadily. Oft times he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper, and I the underside. Not till the loom is silent, and the shuttles cease to fly, will God roll back the canvas, and explain the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as the threads of gold and silver in the pattern he has planned.
Thank you to each for the contribution. I'd like to give a round of applause to each other for that wonderful job. Thank you so much. What I did appreciate about the storytelling was it was full of thankfulness and gratefulness in there, which I think is absolutely beautiful. So well done in all of that. To continue with the storytelling, we are going to watch a DVD that's been prepared, and hopefully it triggers off some more great memories and thoughts for you.
is moving, the weaving is all your own. Choose the right color and push the right thread. Throw through the shuttle and peg down the thread. A rainbow of colors is at your command. Pick all the ripe shades, the far Hindustan. The loom of life is moving, the weaving is all your own. Choose the right color and push the right thread. Throw through the shuttle and peg down the thread. Lives that are gray and heavy with pain may bloom scarlet with courage again. The loom of life is moving, the weaving is all your own. Lives that are gray and heavy with pain may bloom scarlet with courage again. The loom of life is moving, the weaving is all your own.
She comes here every day, this little lady with hair of grey, and she just smiles and shuffles on her way. Through these hospital corridors, she walks along these lonely floors to a bed where an old man used to lay, and an old man used to say, I'm in the summer of my life. I've seen the good times, I've seen the strife. I've just been under the surgeon's knife. Please don't cry, my darling wife. He came here a year ago, and the doctors didn't know if the time for him to go was near. But when it came and he went to sleep, she prayed the Lord his soul to keep. And as she closed her eyes to weep, it seemed that she could hear. I'm in the summer of my life. I've seen the good times, I've seen the strife. I've just been under the surgeon's knife. Please don't cry, my darling wife. She'll sit there for many hours and repeat her marriage vows, and places there the sweetest flowers in bloom. She sits by that empty bed, her weary eyes are wet and red, and the words that he once said still echo through the room. I'm in the summer of my life. I've seen the good times, I've seen the strife. I've just been under the surgeon's knife. Please don't cry, my darling wife, 'cause you and I, we've had some fun, and our love has touched everyone. And in the light of the moon and sun, you and I have been as one.
I was interested to see photos when she was really small, and you could tell that it was her right from that very young age, you know, all the way through. And 99% of the photos all the way through there had a beautiful smile on her face as well. And I think that's a beautiful way to be able to remember her today, and how precious it is as we've been able to look at that. I don't think we realise how precious those photos are, though, until it becomes a moment like this, and we're looking back, and it takes us into the storyline of her life and the memories. And I'm hoping that's what you'll continue to do, continue to share about the stories and the memories that you know. That way, each one will gather more information, more understanding, and more knowledge of her life. And I do believe it's in the midst of those stories that will help you through this difficult time ahead. You know, I've learnt that when death parts us from people that we love, I think if we're wise, we'll learn from this very day, walk away from here, as mentioned before, about feeling as though, not as though something has been ripped away from you, but the reminder of everything that she has given to you during her life and your lives. And in the midst of sadness and grief, I'd really, truly believe that it is the gratefulness and thankfulness that will bring a little bit of peace and happiness in the midst of the sadness that's here as well. Today, as we think about her life, it is the reminder, though, of what really is important in life, isn't it? We balance the scales, we understand what is really important. She knew what was important in her life, the very things that guided and directed her life, the things about friendship and relationship and love were so important to her. And she's held that as a key part of her life in living in this world. So it is my encouragement for each one of you as you remember her life. Take hold of those things that you've admired and respected in her life, apply them in your own lives. And can you begin to imagine what this world would be like if we all took hold of the positive traits of each other? It'd be a magnificent world to live in, wouldn't it? Of course, we're all confronted with the issues of coronavirus at the moment and the way in which it spreads like a pandemic, but wouldn't it be beautiful if the pandemic was as a result of people sharing beautiful memories, and on top of that, the way in which we live our lives and touching this world and making a positive place? Each one of us do have that ability to do that today, and so it is my encouragement as you think about her life. Perhaps when you go home tonight, when you're laying down in bed, perhaps think about these two words, thankful and grateful. You might speak some words directly to her, or it might be just some beautiful memories that you have. I'm grateful, and I think it will help you through this difficult time ahead. Would you please stand with me as we bring this service to a close? Hold on to your memories and hold on to your love, and remember her life with thankfulness and gratefulness, and know that she'll continue to live on in your hearts and your minds and remain there forever. Jane, today you've been surrounded by those with whom you've lived and whom you've loved, and we all stand here together and honour and celebrate the richness of your life. I believe that each one here is glad that she's lived and loved and touched your lives, and molded with sadness that we do need to say farewell in this physical sense, that she'll always be remembered and loved. Your loved ones hold on to the memories of how their lives are intertwined with you. We honour your life and your memory as it will live on. We're thankful for your life, your love, and your significance in each person's life here today. Reverently commit your body to the elements, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust.
I'm a weaver, a master weaver. I thought a loom were the best gods made. Plain cloth, wool, brocade, or satin. I I can walk